Welcome back, Trailblazers. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to take a moment to talk about a tool that has completely transformed the way I plan and navigate my hikes, AllTrails Plus. As a Trailheads ambassador and the organizer of the Yakima Valley Trekkers, I'm out on the trails a lot. One of my favorite features of AllTrails Plus is the ability to edit and create my own maps. Conditions change, fallen trees, washed out sections, or even a last-minute reroute. And with AllTrails Plus, I can adjust my route on the fly and share it with others so everyone stays informed and safe. AllTrails Plus also gives you offline maps, wrong turn alerts, and 3D trail previews to help you stay on track and make the most of your adventure. And the best part, you can get 30% off an AllTrails Plus membership with my exclusive link in the episode show notes. So whether you're planning your next big trek or just looking for a new trail to explore, AllTrails Plus has you covered. Check it out and let's hit the trail. Welcome to Season 15 of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I'm your host, Ivan, and each week we're hitting the trail through conversations with extraordinary hikers from across the United States and beyond. Summer is the season the high country has been holding its breath for. The pass is finally clear, the snowfields shrink back to the shadows, and suddenly the whole map opens up. Ridgelines we could only dream about in February are right there waiting. There's a particular kind of ambition that lives in these long days. The 4 a.m. alpine start, the meadows exploding with lupin and paintbrush, the cold shock of a glacier-fed lake at the end of a dusty climb. The light stretches on forever, and so does the sense that anything is possible up there. This season, I've had the privilege of sitting down with hikers who chase those big summer objectives, the long miles, the high summits, the trips that test what you're made of, and reward you with the kind of views you carry on for the rest of your life. Their stories are about going farther, reaching higher, and finding out who you become somewhere above the tree line. So fill the water bottles, check the forecast one more time, and get ready. Season 15 is here, and the conversations ahead are as wide open, sun-drenched, and full of possibility as a long summer day in the high country. Season 15 kicks off with outdoor educator and former pro rider Meg Atteberry, and a backcountry survival story that will stay with you. 6 days into Wyoming's brutal Wind River high route, 86 miles and 23,000 feet of elevation gain, much of it off-trail. Meg's friend shattered 6 bones in her foot on a steep talus pass, 25 miles from the nearest trailhead. Meg had to hit the SOS button on her Garmin and hold it together through a 20-hour rescue. 2 failed helicopter launches, an overnight in an incoming storm, and an aviation axe built from rocks to guide the chopper in. Meg breaks down exactly what the emergency taught her, why you should always carry a battery pack, never rely on your phone for SOS, double-check your emergency contacts, and pack a signal mirror. We also dig into facing a fear of heights in Moab and the Grand Canyon, why parenthood became her superpower, backpacking with a 4-year-old, running her first ultra, and her 2026 goals in the San Juans and the Grand Canyon's Nankoweap route, a premiere packed with hard-won wisdom for anyone who heads into the backcountry. Without further ado, let's jump into this episode with our guest, Meg. Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I have a really exciting guest with me today who's going to be sharing about her outdoor experiences in and around Colorado and the Southwest, as well as elsewhere. Her name is Meg. Meg, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. For folks that haven't had a chance to follow you, can you share a little bit about yourself and how you got started hiking?
Sure, Ivan. Thanks for having me on. I am so stoked to be here today. My name is Meg Atteberry, and I am an ex-professional outdoor writer and current outdoor educator. So I got started hiking. I did a little bit of hiking when I was younger, like a couple of trips here and there, and they mostly ended in tears and just not generally wanting to do any of the hiking. And then as I came to be more of an adult, I was in grad school. I moved out to Colorado, where I currently live in the mountains, and I really just wanted to soak up everything that Colorado had to offer. So I used to call myself a bad hiker because when I first moved here, I was left at the bottom of the Black Canyon of the Gunnison, and if you have not been there, it's a very rugged, very steep canyon. I sprained my ankle, and the people I was hiking with left me at the bottom. And I got out of that experience. Instead of like rightfully blaming the people I was with for leaving me, I blamed myself. But a few years went by and I found a partner who really wanted to get into backpacking. And I was like, well, I know enough to try this again. And I just fell in love with it. So that is how I came to be. And I went from just being a casual hiker to making adventure pretty much my life and my job. So
yeah, and I kind of wanted to touch base on that because, like you mentioned, you were a outdoor writer and now an outdoor professional coach and educator. What sparked the transition from college to where you are now?
it's a bit of a convoluted story. I was trained as an architect, so I got my master's in architecture. I got my architectural license, and I was saving actually to take a gap year. I was just really unhappy in that world, and I was dating someone who I actually ended up marrying. So they were like, I'll support you in your goal and your dream if you can answer one question for me. And that is, what are you going to do when you get back? And that was a really pivotal question in my life because I didn't have a good answer. And what occurred to me is that I was running away from something and not running to something. So instead of taking that gap year, I actually took all that money that I had saved and decided to invest in myself. And I quit my career as an architect and started freelance writing for the outdoors. I just faked it till I made it. I did a lot of research and reading and was very self-motivated. I ended up getting published in a variety of nationally known outlets and really cut my teeth writing for the outdoors. So I've been published in places like REI, Outside, Backpacker Magazine. I've appeared on national television talking about hiking skills. So I really just, instead of choosing to take a break, I thought logically, like, how can I structure my life to invite more adventure into it? So I have been working for myself ever since. I'm no longer writing for the outdoors, but I still have my own content and my own projects that I'm working on. I currently have a YouTube channel. I used to run one of the most popular outdoor websites for Colorado and the American Southwest. And I just really love sharing my stories and my knowledge with everyone.
And I feel like Colorado specifically is like one of those outdoor meccas. Like when people think of hiking and backpacking in the outdoors, there's a few places that instantly pop into people's heads. And I think Colorado is one of them just because the landscape throughout the state is so unique, along with the rest of the Southwest. In your experience being there and being able to hike and explore the state, what's something most people completely misunderstand about those landscapes in Colorado and the Southwest?
That's a really great question. I think there's different levels of misunderstanding based on your skill sets. I'd say Colorado specifically, people really underestimate, this is going to sound weird, but the traffic. The traffic in and out of Denver into the mountains can be quite hellacious, for lack of a better word. So, planning around, especially on weekends and in the winters and in the summers, it can be very difficult. Often people who are more in the beginner realm underestimate the altitude and just how challenging those environments can be and how variable the weather can be, how the terrain can be, elevation gain and all of those things combined together. And in the Southwest, it's a little bit different. It's almost the opposite in many ways. I feel like the landscapes can be extremely deceiving in either direction. So sometimes you can look at something and you could say, oh, that's not really far away. You look at the map and say, oh, that's not really far away. But what doesn't get picked up in the Southwest is all the micro terrain. There's so much of it. So you could be looking at a point between A and B, but what you're not seeing are all these like washes and small cliffs and impassable areas that will actually make for challenging conditions. So that is, and then obviously the heat is another big one. But it's often a deceiving place. And then sometimes I look at something in the Southwest and I'm like, oh, that'll be so far away. And 5 minutes later, I'm there. So it almost feels like another planet that's on its own sense of space and time.
So true on the traffic. That always gets me going in and out of Denver, where I'll just be cruising either from Colorado Springs up to Denver or vice versa. And then I'll just hit traffic, like weekend traffic. And I'm like, where did all these people come from? And now I've noticed, give myself a little bit extra time, especially trying to get to the Denver International Airport.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. People they're like, we're in the mountains. What do you mean there's going to be traffic? And I'm like, oh man, there's going to be traffic.
Now, another place that I think really keeps bringing you back is down in Moab and the Grand Canyon. Can you share a little bit about what these places mean to you and why they keep pulling you back?
The Grand Canyon and Moab in particular are places that I've just gravitated towards. It sounds very woo-woo, but there's a part of me that feels like I have been there before and I'm really like a part of the landscape, especially the Grand Canyon. I have been kind of a lifelong loosely held goal of mine is to section hike the entire length of the canyon. That is notoriously one, if you've read like A Walk in the Park, it's one of the hardest and harshest landscapes out there, at least in America or the United States. But there's something about it that just draws me in. Like it just draws me in. I feel very connected to myself in that landscape. And same with the areas in and around Moab. There's something deeply moving about it when I'm there. I can't really explain it. And then the colors. I'm a huge sucker for sunrises, sunsets, and color and contrast. So, the red rock country, dusted in snow, or red rock country, right after the sun is set is just an expansive experience for me.
And Meg, one thing I found interesting, I feel like both Moab and the Grand Canyons especially are known for like their steep, jagged cliffs, which means, you got to be a little comfortable with heights in those two places. But I found it interesting that you have talked openly about being afraid of heights. How do you push through that fear in those places like Moab and the Grand Canyon?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I never really considered myself a rock climber or someone who'd be interested at all in rock climbing. I got into it because my partner was trying to quit smoking and they really loved climbing and I really just wanted to support them in their journey. So it fell into my lap, that experience, and it's always been something I struggle with. I still struggle with it. I think the biggest part of negotiating that fear of like exposure and heights is really acknowledging that it's there. The more you try to ignore it, the harder it's going to push back on you. So just giving yourself some time of like, yeah, this is really scary. This is super high consequence. I see that. I know that. And that's okay. And giving myself time to breathe has really helped me work through that fear. And then, of course, I've been doing this for decades. Eventually, it starts to feel a lot less scary and a little bit more familiar and exciting. So that exposure therapy piece is definitely another I guess it's kind of punny, but another good way to work through the fear of heights.
Glad that you're able to push through it and, continue to see these beautiful places. Now, Meg, you did something that most hikers hope they never have to do in the outdoors, and that's hit the SOS button on your Garmin. Can you take us back to that trailhead? What route were you on, and what earns it the reputation as one of the toughest hikes in America?
Yeah, so it was not an experience anyone wants to have in the outdoors. And I was with a friend. We were doing the Wind River High Route up in Wyoming, and we were on the Allen-Dixon route. So whenever you're hearing the word route, it usually means there's no trail. And this route in particular is extremely challenging in the terrain. We covered something like 86 miles with 23,000 feet of gain. And, Everest is 29,000 feet high for some perspective, like above the sea. So it was a lot. Like we were doing 2 to 4 high passes a day. We were spending 4 to 8 hours on talus. So that's, for people who don't know, like anything maybe softball size to, let's say, refrigerator size boulders, just up and down and up and down and up and down. And it's extreme. It's a big challenge for sure, and was a huge test of not our skills, but I think more of our mental endurance than anything. The friend I was with, we were both extremely experienced. We spent tons of time in the mountains. Her and I have alpine climbed technical routes together. We have a lot of rapport between the two of us, and between the two of us have about, over 30 years of experience. And it was just one of those days where, it was just a bad day, just a bad step, like a complete, just could have happened at home, happened to happen while we were 25 miles from the nearest trailhead and not on a trail. So,
oh man. So how many days were you into the trip when the accident happened? Can you kind of take us back to that morning or that day? Like, where were you in the Wind River route? And, what were you kind of thinking about or planning about to do that day?
So we were on day 6 of 7 of the Wind River High Route, and it was the morning. And we were pretty excited that morning because it was going to be the last backcountry pass before we hit a trail, and then we would stay on a trail for the rest of the trip. And we were really, really excited because mentally having to navigate, because there's no GPX files or anything like that. Like you have a map set, you have a rough idea of where you're going, and you're spending a lot of mental energy looking at a map, looking at the terrain, figuring out where you are, figuring out the best way and safest way to get from point A to point B. So we were really excited to be on a trail that day. That I think was one of the biggest things we were excited for, just to give our brain space a break. And we had noted too, we were going up the pass and it was pretty straightforward. And we were both mentioning how it just seemed like something had changed in the air that day. We were out in late August, so it kind of almost felt, we were like, man, it kind of almost feels like fall is right on the horizon. Like something is changing today. And we came up, we topped out on the pass. We were coming from Bonneville Lakes, if you're familiar with the area at all, up an unnamed pass next to Raid Peak. So we'll just call it Raid Peak Pass. And we're coming down off the pass. Now, coming down off the pass, there's a really steep headwall. So a section where it's just really, really steep. And there's huge, big boulder talus, which was how the route was described. And I'd say that's fairly accurate. There are rocks. Some rocks were bigger than me. And we were about maybe 50 yards, 50 feet to 50 yards. It's hard to exactly remember, off the top of the pass coming down. And my friend, we were passing between two boulders that were taller than us, and they were in like a V shape. So I had one foot on one boulder and one foot on the other, and I kind of shimmied through, and my friend was going next, and I just heard her scream. And I turned around and she was on the ground. And it was just a really difficult moment because I was a little bit paralyzed. Like I didn't really know what was going on. I wasn't sure if she was screaming out of pure frustration because she fell, and we were, it was day 6 of 7 of these really brutally long, like very physically and mentally taxing days. So I wasn't sure if she was super frustrated or if something was actually happening. So I was just kind of like, let it out or whatever. And she turns to me and she goes, Meg, like I'm stuck. I can't stand up. And so immediately I'm like, oh my gosh, like what can I do to help? And, she's on all fours. Her foot was stuck and her other foot had slipped in between the two big rocks and was like dangling free. So didn't know how to help her right away. I was like, okay, I don't really know. Like, what should I do? I don't know. So I just ran over to her and I picked her up by her armpits because the weight of her pack is obviously pushing down on her. So I lifted her up by her armpits, and she was able to get her stuck foot loose and her dangling foot unstuck. So she scooted through the little boulder section and we just sat down on a really big rock, and she was bleeding. She was crying. She was obviously visibly upset and hurt. And I just was like giving her space, like, hey, like, let's just sit for a minute. Let's just take a moment and breathe here and figure out, what's going on and what happened. According to her, she had heard a crunch in her foot. Her foot had gotten jammed and she didn't realize her foot was stuck. So when she lifted up her other foot to get into the little rock slot, she slipped and fell because she couldn't lift like her back leg. She didn't know it was stuck.
Oh my goodness. And, you mentioned that you kind of went from frozen to functional pretty quickly. Once you both sat down and kind of assessed the situation, how long do you think it took to, decide to hit the SOS button once you kind of got an assessment of what was happening with her?
Yeah. So I know her really, really well. I know she has a tendency to push through a lot of pain. She has a really, really high pain tolerance, probably arguably harder than mine. And I birthed a child, so I like to think mine's pretty high. But I was kind of like, oh gosh, I'm not sure if anything's wrong. So my initial thought process with her was like, let's just see where we're at. Okay, let's wipe the blood off your leg. Let's finish crying. Let's talk about it. And I asked her, how bad does it feel? She's like, it hurts pretty bad. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm looking around and I'm looking at where we are. We are not in a safe location. We are high up on a pass. There's no water. There's no flat ground. There's just rocks everywhere. We knew weather was going to be moving in a few hours. So I was like, at that point, I was like, let's just see what's going on. There's a chance we're going to need to call search and rescue, but let's see what happens once we start moving a little bit, see how she feels, see how we feel. Like maybe it just, because I had pinched my foot at a certain point on the trip and it really, really hurt for like 30 minutes or so, but it edged off. So I was like, let's get moving. So we start moving down the pass and she's moving real slow, like the slowest I've ever seen her move. And she was just kind of like, I don't know, like something's not feeling right. And I was like, okay, well, can I take your bag? So she said, yeah, that'd be great. So I take her pack. So I have 2 packs on at this point, and I'm trying to move in a way that is safe for me, because the last thing you want to happen is for me to also fall, because when you're carrying 2 bags, it's rather easy to do. Your balance is really thrown off. And she's saying like, hey, my right foot, like, could we just find flat ground? If you can find, I can't flex it really. And I'm like, all right. So we start moving a little bit, and we barely got anywhere. And it had been about 15 minutes. And I asked her, I was like, hey, is the pain getting better or is it getting worse? And she's like, it's getting worse. And I'm like, all right, do you want to try to splint it? So we decided we're going to try to splint it. We used climber's tape, because I always carry that in my first aid kit, because it can just be really handy for a lot of different things, and 2 hiking poles to splint it. And we put like the butts of the poles, so the tops of the poles on the ground, so she could like keep kind of the weight off of it and she wouldn't have to flex her foot. And at this point we had made it down to a flatter area, but we're still on the pass. And there's 2 options. There is an option to go up and to the left a little bit, where we would ride up on a ridge, and there was a lake up there. We knew there was a lake up there, but we couldn't really see it. And that was where the trail that we were supposed to meet up with was. And the second option was to head for a lake that we could see. And this lake was very big. It had grass near it, a lot of open grass and flat ground. And at this point, I started thinking, I don't know if we're going to get out of here. We may have to be calling search and rescue. I was like kind of edging her to make, we could either way, if we decided to keep going, we could meet up with the trail later. And we had a conversation, and I was like, hey, I think we should aim for this lake we can see, because there's lots of flat ground here. So if we need to call search and rescue, they have an easy way to reach us. We can't see the other lake. If it's all talus, they can't land a helicopter. So I think we should go for what we can see. And we should get down there and reassess, just to get out of this kind of dangerous terrain we were in. And she was not very open to calling search and rescue at that point. Understandably, I was not surprised by her reaction. And I had texted, I'm not going to say it was my emergency contact, but the person, because we can talk about the logistics of that later, but the person who knew the most about my trip was our spouse. And I texted him on the Garmin. I was like, hey, my friend fell, like, it's a bad situation. I'm not sure we're going to get out here without calling for help. Like, I'm just letting you know what's going on. So at that point, I kind of knew. And she was still in a ton of pain. And I was like, hey, are you up for taking some ibuprofen? And what I was trying to do, I used to be a lifeguard, but this is 25 years ago. So I'm using this very deeply rooted, probably somewhat incorrect knowledge for how to assess somebody that's just old and in the back of my brain. And I was like, okay, let's give you some painkillers and see how you respond. If you feel better with the over-the-counter painkillers, like maybe this isn't a huge injury. If you feel worse, we're in trouble. And she took it, and we decided we were going to make our way down the pass. And at this point, the pole splint wasn't really working, so she had to take it off because it was just too steep. So she's scooting down these rocks on her butt, like screaming, because every time her foot touched the ground, it was excruciating. And I gave her back my bag, because my bag was a lighter pack. I took everything out of it but water, and I put a bright orange, like a pack cover, bright orange. So my thought process was, if she goes into shock or something, I can see her with the bright orange pack cover. And I tell her, hey, I think we should call search and rescue. So we decided to hit the button. And I knew from just listening to podcasts and being, friends with people who are involved with search and rescue, I just knew it could take a really long time. And my thought process was, if we start moving while they start mobilizing to get to this one specific spot that we can see, like, we can get through this process faster. So it's kind of when we decided. And like, she was taking the painkillers, and the pain was just kept increasing and increasing and increasing. So I knew something was very, very, very wrong. I had no problem making the call. She was very upset about it, understandably. And to me, it was like a no-brainer. It was like, we cannot do this. Like, we're 25 miles from the nearest trailhead. We are very deep in the backcountry. We have 1 day's left worth of food. Like, what are we? We're moving glacially slow. I think we covered maybe quarter to a half mile in 2.5 hours. So like, what choice do we have?
Oh my goodness, Meg. And, for me, I have an emergency SOS communication device as well. And the only time I've hit the SOS button is to do the test that they allow you to do. And even that kind of it feels weird to push that button. Can you take us back to like, how did you feel pushing it? Even though you knew it was the right choice, how was it pushing the SOS button on your Garmin? And then how long would you say it took to get a response from search and rescue on the Garmin device?
Yeah, it felt really surreal. It's one of those moments you just never expect to have happen to you. You want to be prepared for it, but you're never like, okay, like I'm really going to do this. I was kind of like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm going to do it. All right, I'm doing it. Okay, I'm doing it. And when you hit it, it beeps really, really loudly and it counts down. It's like, brr, 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 brr. It's like you are calling SAR, so you don't accidentally hit it. And it counts down to 0 and it feels like a movie to me. So you're like, oh, what's going to happen when it hits 0? And what happens is the process is pretty intense. So you get directed to Garmin dispatch. And we were, for the record, we were above tree line. So unobstructed view of the sky. And it was near instant. So they said, you have been connected to Garmin emergency response. Then you have a select set of preset messages you can send. If you just hit OK on the device, the first one is somebody is hurt or sick and I need medical help. There's other ones on there, like I was in a car accident, I am lost, my boat crashed, things like that, that are very obviously not hiking related. So it was automated. And then Garmin emergency dispatch talks to you. Garmin emergency dispatch then coordinates with the local emergency dispatch, who is also speaking with you. And then that dispatch gets in touch with search and rescue, and everybody is in communication with each other. So it's a bit hectic, honestly. And I'm also talking to my spouse, who, for the record, was not listed as an emergency contact on my Garmin device because we adventure together a lot. I just didn't think to change the emergency contact. So other people are getting, like other family members are getting information about what's going on, but he was not. So I was trying to just relay it to him so he could relay it to my friend's spouse. It was so much. I'm carrying 2 bags, this super heavy pack at this point, trying to help my friend get off this mountain, trying to tell search and rescue where I'm going, and trying to coordinate with all these different people. It took a lot of mental fortitude. My brain just went to a place that was like, this is what needs to get done. This is the next logical step. We're going to take that next logical step and we're going to work through this together. But in the moment, it felt a little chaotic, if that makes sense.
Oh, I can't even imagine. And you hit it right on the head, Meg. From what I've heard and talked to people who've hit the SOS button, it's not an instant, they'll come and get you within the hour. Sometimes it can be hours. You might even have to stay overnight. How do you keep her stable when she is, dealing with the pain? You're communicating with everybody and that, help is still hours away.
I think a lot of that comes down to, I'm a mom. So for me to be in that caretaker role is very second nature at this point. And I also have a lot of experience with my friends. So we allow space for her to emote, we were going down the mountain and she'd just be like, I'm a bad bitch and we're going to get this shit done. And she'd be screaming it at the top of her lungs to get her off. And the mountain and, I would just yell it back to her. We were in this back and forth of yeah, it was very raw, very emotional, and allowing her to have those emotions and allowing myself to have those emotions. And then to say, okay, now we're moving forward. This is our next step. This is where we're going to be. This is where we're going to go. Really, really helped us out just to get off the pass. Now, our rescue took 20 hours. So we did overnight. It was a long 20 hours. And the reason is I didn't expect them to send a helicopter. I thought maybe they'd come in by foot or on horseback, but they sent a helicopter, and the weather in the mountains changes all the time. And the helicopter base is hours by car, away from where we are. So, the weather will be different where we are versus where they are. And they tried to launch twice. They couldn't get to us. So the first attempt at contact, they made it to the basin and they circled around, but the winds were so horrible, they could not land. And I had set up a little base camp. So I was just a caretaker. I just went into this caretaker role. And I was like, when we finally got to some flat ground, I was like, you sit here, you do what you got to do. I'm going to run around. So I built a giant X, which is the aviation sign for medical help needed, out of rocks that I had to harvest from various locations in the basin we were in. And then on top of that, I spread out all of the light, the bright and kind of contrasting gear that we had, which was namely that pack cover I talked about. And then I I also took my camp shirt, which is neon yellow, and I stuck it up in a trekking pole as like a windsock so that they could see where we were. Because they have your geolocation, but they have to physically, like with their eyes, put eyes on you and locate you. So the first time they flew through, we were really unsure if they had seen us or not. And we thought they did, just kind of based, but they couldn't land. So they turned around and went away. And then the dispatch is updating me saying like, okay, we located you. We can't land. The weather's really bad. We'll try again in an hour. So once we moved into more of like sit and wait mode, it was a lot of us just talking about all the things we had going for us, right? We were backpacking. So we had shelter, we had food, there's a lake nearby, we had water, we had like each other. And I think just focusing on that positive energy and like the next steps we were taking and really focusing on the fact that we were doing things proactively, or I was doing things mostly proactively to keep us comfortable really helped us not have compounding problems where problems are turning into problems. So it helped keep our mental state really high, and I think that was probably the single most important thing that we did and that we do in our partnership anyway, that helped us not spiral until nightfall, but not spiral. So
props to both of you for just, being able to keep a positive mental state during this. Because like you said, if you don't go into it or you're not handling it positively or as best as you can, it just compounds the issue and it just, keeps making things worse and worse. Taking us back to when the helicopter finally lands, what was the emotion for both of you when you finally see it land and you know that, rescue is just a few feet away?
So they tried to launch in the evening and they couldn't because the storm that had come to us had gotten to them, and they told us we had to overnight. And we weren't thrilled, obviously. We did not have any like prescription painkillers. My friend's foot at this point was massive. So she broke 6 bones in her foot and needed near immediate orthopedic surgery. That was her end diagnosis. So we go to sleep, and overnight, that part of my brain that was keeping the team together shut off and went to sleep too. So I woke up at 3 a.m, just like terrified. I was like, what if we have to ration food and wait it out some more? Like there was a storm front that was moving in for a couple of days. So I was just in, like my mind was spinning. And you can't turn off your Garmin and you can't turn off tracking and you can't turn anything off during a search and rescue. It cancels the search and rescue. If it shuts off, that's one thing, but you can't turn it off. So at 5:45 in the morning, after my head's been spinning, and my friend's obviously not sleeping because she's in extreme amount of pain, we're just kind of lying there waiting for daybreak. We get a message from SAR that's like, what does the weather look like? We're ready to launch. And I told him, I was like, it's overcast, but not socked in, no wind. So they're coming to get us. And when we see the helicopter, it felt, again, very, very surreal. Like the prop wash, which is like the, in the movies when the helicopter comes down and like everything blows around. Like we had a trekking pole tent, so I had to take all the poles out. And when that hit and we knew that they were actually going to land and they weren't just going to circle around again, like I was overwhelmed with every emotion you could possibly imagine. I was bawling my eyes out like profusely and unable to stop because I had just been holding in so much. So I was sad. I was relieved to pass the baton on to somebody else to help us get out of there. I was still scared for my friend, like what was going to happen next? Like, what was she going to need? What was the diagnosis going to be? And I was overwhelming. And they looked at me and they were like, Meg, like, we're okay. Like, we're going to be okay. It's okay. And I was just like, I know. I just can't stop crying. And I pulled it together a little bit. The search and rescue people were like, what's wrong with you? Like, you're not the hurt one. And I was like, just very emotional, And they loaded us up. They picked up my friend and loaded them up into the chopper. They had to find our bear spray. We had bear spray. You can't have bear spray in a helicopter. And they had to put it in like a case outside the helicopter and load us up and take us out of the winds. And I felt just so grateful for them. Like so grateful. It was unbelievable what they had chosen to do for us and help us out, and I just couldn't believe it. And then it didn't stop when we landed. So in order for insurance is kind of funky and comes into play. So we didn't pay anything for our rescue because they dropped us off in an airstrip. And then the ambulance met us at the airstrip. And once we got in the ambulance, my friend's health insurance kicked in. And then I had the same repeat experience to a lesser degree, but we were sitting in the ambulance. I was sitting in the front and they were diagnosing her in the back. And I was just crying. Like I was so tired and so exhausted and so overwhelmed by everything that had happened.
You mentioned that your friend needed surgery right away. How's your friend doing now? And, I'm curious, how long after this event did you guys hit the trail once she fully recovered?
Yeah. So we went actually on this trip. She wanted to start a family and we had trained. They were like, I want to do two things. I want to do the 4 passes loop in a day and I want to do the Wind River High Route. Do you want to come with me? And I said, yes, of course. So we did the 4 passes loop in a day a few weeks before we left for the Wind River High Route. And this was like their big trip before they went through the process of IVF. They're queer. So they got surgery within a week of being home. And then about a month later went through IVF. So they're now fully recovered, but very pregnant. And due this summer with their first child, which is really, really exciting. So she hasn't really been out a ton since then because of all of that change. I have, and it was a little unnerving to go out again. I went into the Grand Canyon with a handful of friends. We again were doing a route, and beforehand I was pretty nervous. I was like, hey guys, I don't mean to be paranoid, but here are all the things that are going to change about my trip plan because I went through this experience. So everybody needs to be okay with all this information I'm now asking you for, and took the lessons learned just logistically from that experience and applied it to there. But once I got out on the trail, I realized, it's just walking. And my friend was super upset and really bummed the whole time we were out there. And one of the things we did talk about during our rescue experience was kind of, she asked me like, well, am I one of those people who just goes in the mountains unprepared? And I was like, no, like we were both in some of the best shape of our lives. We are both extremely experienced. Like this could have happened on your staircase at home. Like there was nothing you could have done to prevent that. And I think knowing that is in a way kind of helpful, in a way a little scary, but in a way really helpful because you're like, it's just like, this is life. This is just something that can happen in life. And if we're choosing to go into the outdoors, this is a risk we take on, just a bad step. And so when I got back out there for the first time, I was like, it's just walking. Like we're just walking. And maybe a bit more conscious of how I'm stepping and where I'm stepping, but it can happen to anyone at any time, so it's almost like stressing about it isn't going to help your situation.
Oh, so true, Meg. And, now that you're removed from the situation and have been able to reflect on it, I'm wondering if you can share with our listeners, especially those that carry a Garmin or an SOS beacon, but have never really thought about using it. What do you want them to take away from your experience that you hope if, in the event that they do have to hit the SOS button, that would potentially help them or prepare them for what's to come?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, my biggest takeaway lesson is always carry a battery pack. Always. Even if you're on a simple few-hour day hike, carry a battery pack. Your battery for your device drains very quickly. You cannot turn tracking off. So the device will drain quickly. Your phone, especially if you have a mini and you're not you're using your phone to communicate, will also be drained very, very quickly. With that being said, I would also not rely on your phone for an emergency. A lot of people choose to. I would not recommend it. Just the technology as of right now is just not there. Like I tried to, at one point, I had to cut off communication because if you're sending too many messages via Garmin, none of them will go through. So I had to cut off communication with my spouse. And I tried to use the iPhone satellite thing, and you have to sit there and line up your phone with the satellite. Like there's no way you're going to be doing that in an emergency. You're not the one who's hurt. You're going to be running around constantly caring for that person. You're going to have to go to get water. You're going to have to set up the tent. You're going to have to get to a safe space. You're going to have to triage and pay attention to their vital signs and make sure they're not going into shock. There's so much you're doing that screwing around, waving your phone in the air is not going to be on your to-do list. So those are the big logical takeaways. And again, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but making sure before every trip you have the appropriate emergency contacts, because I had 2 people who were really unable to be very helpful in that situation listed. It would have been much better if I had my spouse and my friend's spouse on there. And then mentally, these things can just happen. I have been doing the outdoors thing for many, many, many years. I've seen a lot of different things in my life and stuff can just happen. So just remembering to take a breath when you're in that situation, if you're prone to panicking, and understand that Like panicking is not going to get you anywhere. You need to be cool and collected and make the next logical choice. So just take a moment to pause, take a deep breath and say like, I trust in my instincts. I trust in my ability to make decisions out here. And I'm going to make the best decision with the information and the situation I am given with. And that is what's going to keep me moving forward. And I'm going to focus on one decision at a time. That is like mentally the best thing you can do to prepare for something like this.
And kind of on the flip side, Meg, because I feel like your mental fortitude and your ability to navigate all these multiple communication lines is something that was a huge benefit to you and your friend. Is there anything looking back that you wish you had known or maybe had trained for that could have been helpful in that situation?
Yeah, it's funny you mention this. I'm taking a woofer in a couple weeks. Which is a wilderness first responder course. I was just like, you know what? I get out a lot with my family. I have a young daughter. She's 4 years old. Like someone in our group needs some solid wilderness medicine. I didn't necessarily wish I had had that. I just wish that I had had a little bit more than what I was remembering. The other thing, I had a really nice opportunity to debrief with one of the search and rescue members. He gave me a ride to my car, which was incredibly thoughtful and amazing because it was 2.5 hours away from where we were. And I asked him, I was like, hey, like, what is one thing that could have done better in your eyes as someone who deals with this all the time? And he said, you know, you guys handled it so well. We were very convinced that somebody on your team was like a first responder. So we were really surprised to learn that you weren't. And he said the one thing that he would recommend is a signal mirror or some way to signal, like a reflective way to signal. Because he said it was pretty hard to spot us. So your clothing choices and all that kind of thing matter. He actually gave me his signal mirror, which is really cool. I do carry it with me. On some of my lighter and faster trips, I have a space blanket. Actually, it was something that I keep in my day kit, but maybe wouldn't have in my backpacking kit because you have your sleeping bag. But a space blanket, because it's big, huge, and reflective, and you can wave it around to get the attention of search and rescue, sort of regardless of what environment you're in, right? Because if we think about, I spend a lot of time in desert and a lot of time in mountains. In the mountains, that neon safety orange is going to be great. In the desert, like not so much because everything's kind of red and orange hued. So carrying something with you that is going to make you stand out is one thing that I've changed. I've also put prescription painkillers in my first aid kit because I never want to see somebody have to suffer like that overnight, like ever again. So
Boy, yeah, I've never thought about carrying a reflective device or something because, you think that because of your clothes, maybe your tent, that they'd be able to spot you. But from that distance or that elevation up there, you might be so tiny that what you think is visible isn't really visible to them, especially in a large area. So that's a really good tip. I'm going to have to put that on my pack list.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a real easy ad. They don't weigh a lot, so that's nice.
And Meg, you mentioned, you're a mom and, you've started to bring your daughter outdoors and camping. And I feel like sometimes parents have this idea that the adventure ends once you become a parent, and you've really challenged that idea. And I'm wondering if you could share with us, what has traveling and camping with your daughter taught you?
Oh, wow. I could write a book about that topic. One reason I've been privileged enough to live this insanely amazing, adventurous life, been paid to travel all over the world and go on these outdoor adventures and really experience things. And, one of the big reasons I chose to have kids, for better or worse, is I felt very bored after a while. And so I chose to have a child. And I went into having a child with the very bullheadedness of saying, your life doesn't end when you have a kid. It begins in a new direction. And that doesn't mean you have to give up adventures, whether that be with your kid or personally. I do both. I have never ran a marathon. I was never even a runner before I had my kid. And I just did a self-supported ultra last year. So, there's all of these possibilities. And I think one thing that parents and moms in particular can easily get bogged down in the everyday exhaustion and drudgery and just logistics and mental load of dealing with a child and say well, I don't have time for that anymore. I don't have energy for that anymore. I don't have space space for that anymore in my life. And I look at that situation as a superpower. I equate my ability to push myself after having a child because of my child, right? So she has given me more endurance. She has given me more patience. She has given me a deeper level of enduring and understanding and suffering than I would have ever experienced pre-kid as a birthing parent, right? I went through labor. I'm like, I could get through labor. I can get up this mountain, off this pass, do this thing. Like, you can see that as a hindrance to your life, or you can say, hey, that's my superpower now. My superpower is that I have I know how to do it tired. I know how to do it frustrated. I know how to do it when my plate feels really full. And going out and doing it, and bringing your child along is incredibly challenging in many ways, but at the same time is just as rewarding. I have such a deeper appreciation for what I do because of her in many ways, not just seeing the world through her lens, right? But also how she has enabled me to appreciate my own goals and time way more in a way that I never understood before. So it's not just like me getting out and adventuring with my family. And my daughter's very, very adventurous. So we just got back from traveling for 3 months. We were in Africa for 2 months with her and hiking and doing national park things, going on safari. It was a ton of fun. And, she's been camping since she was 7 weeks old. She backpacks, she climbs, she hikes, she loves it. And we have a great time together as a family. But at the same time, the lessons I've learned from her have also been applicable to myself. And the parenting space can be very judgy and very difficult to navigate. And sometimes I get very nervous talking about it. But don't discount the lessons you're learning every day and what you're enduring every day in parenthood, and being able to apply it to your own experiences of the world, not just your experience surrounding your kid, if that makes sense.
Beautifully said, Meg. And yes, it is a superpower. And I got to congratulate you for doing your first ultra. That's incredible.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we could probably do a second episode on just your experience in Africa, but I can't wait for you to catch us up on social media with all those adventures. Now, Meg, I feel like there's a lot of people in the last couple of years getting to know the outdoors, getting comfortable with hiking, maybe backpacking, climbing. For those that might be in a similar position where you were, where, they didn't have that outdoor background or they had a bad experience, what would be the first step that you'd encourage them to take in order to start feeling comfortable with the outdoors?
Oh, there's so much you can do. It kind of depends on what kind of person you are, right? I mean, find where you can find confidence in yourself, right? Where do you draw your confidence from? And I'm not saying be overconfident and go do something dangerous or whatever, but if you can feel comfortable in your ability to make decisions and in your ability to try something, and you can be comfortably uncomfortable being new at something, you can find you're going to go quite far, Start really small. It doesn't have to be something crazy and epic. I know we've talked a lot about these big goalposts that I've hit or whatever, but at the same time, just getting out and car camping near a national park you've always wanted to explore and doing day hikes is a great way to gain experience. Sticking to places where there might be a little bit more people, it can help you build a little bit of confidence. Any way in which you can say to yourself, I feel comfortable with myself and making my own choices and decisions, and then getting out and trying something new is a great way to go. My first backpacking trip as an adult, I was super duper broke. I used a sleeping pad that was 15 years old that I had used from summer camp. I did it in jeans. I don't care if that gets me canceled. And I had steel toe boots because I was working construction and that was all I could afford. But I still went and did it, So just giving yourself permission to try is the easiest and best place to start.
Great advice, Meg. That was it for your episode questions. This next segment are questions that we like to ask all our guests. And I'm wondering, in your own personal experience, do you have a pre-hike ritual or maybe a first mile mindset?
Pre-hike, I'm always nervous. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. I could be doing something very simple. I'm still going to be a little bit ooh, I don't know what to expect, So acknowledging that nervousness is really, really great. And my first mile mindset is always hey, this feels really good. What is one thing that I see around me that is really beautiful or is really catching my attention? It could be as simple as a bird song. It could be something as epic as alpenglow. I choose to focus on that. And that starts to get me into the rhythm of what I'm about to go do.
And then the one that I think a lot of people are curious about is, what's your go-to post-hike meal or drink?
That's a great question. I love nachos. So random, but I will eat an entire plate of nachos after a real big hike.
I like that. I think a lot of people have said burgers and pizza, but nachos is so underrated. You load that up and yeah, I'm right there with you. I could do a whole entire plate by myself after
Yeah,
a
you
hike.
get all the food groups. What's there not to love?
Right? You get everything. Now, Meg, you've, of course, have been able to try out different gears from, the 15-year-old sleeping pad that you had to now going with newer, lighter gear. What's one piece of gear that you'll never compromise on now?
My sleeping pad. I mean, I'm 39. I'm not getting any younger. So if I don't sleep good, which is always a struggle for me anyway, in the outdoors, it's not a good time. So my stuff will be really, really light. And my sleeping pad is decidedly not. And I'm totally okay with that. I call it the barge. The pleasure barge.
Is it one of the bigger, like 4-inch, 5-inch sleeping pads?
Yeah, I've got the Thermarest Neoloft wide. So it's like 4-something inches and 26 inches wide.
Oh, perfect. Love that. And now on the flip side, what's the most overrated piece of gear that you've tried in your own personal experience?
So, spicy take, and no shame, but to anyone who loves them. But I have done a real big deep dive. The new water bottles, the trendy hiking specific water bottles that came out over the last couple of years. I used to test gear professionally, and I just do not buy into it. I think it's a lot of greenwashing. I don't understand why you wouldn't everybody has water bottles in their cabinet. Just use what you got, There's no need to introduce new plastic into the waste stream.
Now, Meg, both in Washington and Colorado, the mountains have already started to open up. Is there any hiking or adventure goals that you have for the remainder of 2026?
Yeah, kind of. I had so many big goals last year. I had a big goal of like backpacking with my daughter for the first time, the 4 passes loop in a day, and the Wind River High Route. That this year, it feels like I don't have anything going on. I'm holding everything very lightly. So I do want to do another solo backpacking trip. I have a sort of aggressive, really random, looked at a bunch of map sets and planned a route through the San Juans that I hope to have the opportunity to go on. Unlike Washington, Colorado is in a state of drought that's pretty extreme. So it's really going to depend on water availability and fires if I'm able to do that. And then at the end of the year, I will be knocking out another section of the Grand Canyon, and I will be taking on the most challenging, according to the NPS, trail in the Grand Canyon called the Nankoweap. And I am going to introduce my daughter to her very first backpacking trip in the desert. So I'm really excited about that because it's a huge passion of mine, and I finally feel ready enough to take her, where you got to bring in your own water and poop in a bag. So I'm excited.
Oh, that's awesome. Can't wait to see what 2026 has to offer for you. Meg, we always like to finish off the podcast with a segment of this or that questions. These are all hiking related. And for season 15, we got some new ones. You're more than welcome to say both or neither. But the first one is, when it comes to your hikes or backpacking trips, do you track the hike or do you turn off tracking?
I like to track the hike. I'm a data nerd, so I love to track it. And what's really cool is my partner has put all of my hikes since I've gotten a watch into Google Earth. So I can fly around the world and see what I've done.
Now, the next one, Meg, when it comes to hiking and backpacking, are you more of a home range or destination travel?
So this is a hard question because my home range is a destination. And I can get to a lot of destinations within a weekend, So I'd have to say home range from that perspective, right? Because there's so much in my home, but I really love a good destination. So that's a tough one. Both. I'm going to edge towards both on that answer to that one.
Now, this next one's brand new, Meg. We haven't done it in previous seasons. We're wondering, are you a trip report writer or a trip report reader?
Well, seeing as how I used to be a freelance writer for the outdoors, I'm a trip report writer for sure. But I do read a lot of trip reports because often that's the only thing I've got to go on for some of the things that I'm doing.
And now, when it comes to bringing you the most enjoyment, does the first mile of the hike bring you more joy, or is it the last mile of the hike?
I love this question, but first mile.
Now, this is also another new one. If you had to choose, would you choose a trail that broke you or a trail that made you? And the one that you don't choose, we'll just say it gets wiped from your memory.
So my hot take is I think the trails that make you are the trails that break you a little bit in some way. So I'm not sure where that puts me.
A little bit of both?
Yeah, a little bit of both, right? You know, the ones you're going to really remember are the ones where things didn't go to plan or didn't look the way you thought they would, right?
Right. Now, this next one's about your footwear. Are you team trail runners or team hiking boots?
Oh, team trail runner, 100%.
And then this next one's going to be tough, I think, for you because you love both of them. But if you had to choose one, desert heat or alpine cold?
Ooh, I got to go with desert heat.
And then this one's going to be tough because Colorado is known for both of these in stunning fashion. But spring wildflowers or fall colors?
Oh, this is so tough. But I got married in the fall, so I'm going with fall colors.
And then you know about different types of fun, type 1, type 2, type 3. If you had to choose for your day hikes or backpacking trips, would you choose type 1 or type 2 fun?
If I am without my child, I am going to choose type 2. If she's in the mix, fingers crossed, it's type 1.
And then the last one is if you had to choose between one of these, would you choose backpacking trips or day hikes?
I think backpacking trips, I really love the changing of the day. So sunrise and sunset I'm a sucker for them. So the best way to get a lot of that is by sleeping out in the wild.
Well, that was it, Meg, for the this or that questions. For folks that are interested in learning more about you and seeing your past outdoor adventures, where are some of the places that they can follow you both online and on social media?
Yeah, for sure. So I have a YouTube channel at Meg in the Forest Outdoors, where I dissect popular outdoor rules using my journalism background and data analysis background. So I analyze data, talk to experts, and look at scientific studies to take popular outdoor rules of thumb and decide if they are a myth, a mantra, or something in between. And then to just follow along with my rants and ramblings in everyday life, you can find me on Instagram at Meg in the Forest.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to put those in the episode show notes so people can follow along. Meg, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your experience. It was truly remarkable to hear you telling the story, gave me goosebumps, and I think you provided some really valuable information on today's episode. But just want to take the time to thank you again, and I can't wait to see what 2026 has to offer for you.
Thanks so much. It was so awesome to be here, Ivan.
And that brings us to the end of this episode alongside Meg. We extend a heartfelt thanks to her for joining us on the podcast. Be sure to follow her on Instagram, and for more, be sure to check out the episode show notes. This episode of Hikes and Mics was produced by Jordan Smith. Be sure to follow her adventures on Instagram at jordan.journeys. New episodes will drop every Monday throughout the summer hiking season, with the occasional Friday bonus episodes along the way. To make sure you never miss a moment of these inspiring trail stories, hit that follow or subscribe button. Your support truly keeps this community moving forward, one episode at a time. Don't forget to connect with us on Instagram at Hikes and Mics. That's where you'll find behind-the-scenes episode visuals, my own summer hiking adventures, and plenty more to keep that high country stoke alive while the long days last. As we wrap up today's journey, remember, the passes are open, the peaks are calling, and the whole season is stretched out ahead of us like a trail with no end in sight. So chase those big summer miles, soak in every hour of daylight, and keep climbing toward whatever's waiting above the next ridge. Until next time, my fellow hikers, happy hiking. This episode's music was created by Ketsa. Follow along with him on Instagram at Ketsa Music. This episode is brought to you by Ursa Minor Outfitters. Folks, I'm absolutely in love with my loon mug. It's handmade. It's an absolute piece of art. Whether it's at the office or at the house, people keep asking to check it out. If you're not a loon fan, they also have other beautiful mugs for wildlife fans of moose, bears, and eagles. They specialize in products highlighting the outdoors and local pride through quality design by local artists. They've even started expanding into items beyond mugs, like apparel, dog accessories, and soon candles and more. They also try to partner and highlight other small businesses, and in some cases, forego profits in lieu of charitable giving to help their community, such as the dog rescue. So check them out, UrsaminorOutfitters.com, and enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. And for our four-legged hiking partners, they also have a portable silicone dog bowl and also a sweet over-the-collar dog bandana. Go check them out, UrsaminorOutfitters.com, and don't forget to enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order.